Hi everybody, and welcome to my review of the Derek Speare Design Type 3 hydraulic handbrake. Now the first thing you'll see is this handbrake is massive, clocking in at over 17 inches or 440 mil from the bottom to the top. The handbrake is finished in a beautiful machined aluminium with black and chrome accents. I really love the attention to detail with the chrome reservoir, master cylinder and fittings, and the black slave cylinder. So this handbrake is a hydraulic handbrake, so I'll quickly go over how it works. There's brake fluid which sits in the reservoir here, and as you pull the handbrake, this plunger here will depress the plunger in the master cylinder, which will then send the fluid through this hose around to the slave cylinder. I'll now flip the handbrake around so we can see the slave cylinder a bit better. So this is the slave cylinder here. So as you pull on the handbrake, the pressure from the master cylinder will be pushed through this hose here and into the slave cylinder. And as it pulls back, it will then pull back on these bumpers, giving you the resistance that you'd normally feel in a normal hydraulic handbrake. The pressure is then read through this pressure transducer here, which is turned into an analog signal and is sent back to your computer, and that's how the handbrake works. So from the pressure transducer, you'll plug into this cable, which will send a signal through to the controller box, which will then plug a USB into the computer. Now the good thing about this controller box versus the last one is Derek has included a 2-meter cable on it. So you don't have to have the controller box mounted near where the handbrake is. This is great for cable management, so you can have the handbrake up the top of your rig, and then you can run this wire down to a more convenient place where you can mount your controller box. The controller box has these 4 mounting holes, which makes it easier to either cable tie to your rig or to attach to 8020 or a similar mounting type device like that. Now there is some adjustment we can do on these handbrakes. The first up is the preload on the slave cylinder. Now at the end of the slave cylinder you'll see these 2 bolts here. These can be loosened or tightened, which will adjust the amount of preload on the rubber buffers. This will give you a stiffer initial resistance or a softer initial resistance. So if you want a little bit of play at first, then you can loosen them off. And if you want it tighter, then you can tighten them up, and that will give you more initial resistance. Now the second adjustment you can make is the angle of the handle. Now this is done through this little handle on the side of the handbrake here, and what you do is you can, if you pull the handbrake forward, you can drop that handle down, and you'll see now the handle will be almost vertical. And then if you click that one forward, then it will slightly incline forwards, and you can do that again, and then it will be inclined even further to the front, and then it has one more click, and then that will be the furthest you can have the handbrake forward. This gives you a bit of flexibility if you want your handbrake straight up and down, or if you want it slightly forward. With mine, I have it in the furthest forward, so that way I can have it in line with my sequential shifter. When it comes to mounting, there's just 4 bolts on the bottom which can either be drilled into an existing handbrake mount, or you can make an adapter for 8020 rigs or similar. For my rig, I made an adapter which bolts up to my PVC handbrake mount. So let's do a quick comparison of the 2 handbrakes. First up, we have the new Derek Speare Design Type 3 handbrake and the original Derek Speare Design Type 1 handbrake. Now you notice the first and most obvious difference is the size. The Type 3 is considerably bigger than the original Type 1. Now also you'll notice the aesthetics have improved a lot. With the original you just had a plastic reservoir and a plain master cylinder, where with the new one we've got this lovely chrome finish on the reservoir and the master cylinder, and all the plumbing. Also, the rest of the colour scheme is a lot more concise on the new one. It goes for a simple chrome and black finish, where the old one had a red, black and unfinished metal on it. I think the new one looks a lot better aesthetically, and it looks stunning when mounted on the rig. You'll also notice the movement of the new one is much smoother than the original. The original had quite a bit of play in it, where the new one is rock solid. One of the other benefits of the new handbrake is on the old handbrake, the controller box was attached to the base. This gave it quite a large footprint. If you look where the mounting holes are on the original, you needed quite a large space to be able to mount it. With the new one, the mounting bolts are really close together, so you can mount them to 80/20 or something similar like that, and it won't actually take up that much room on your rig. All up, the biggest improvement is the attention to detail and workmanship on the new handbrake. It is truly a beauty to look at when it's mounted to your rig. I will now go mount this to my rig and we'll continue with the setup and configuration of the handbrake. Okay, now we'll have a quick talk about mounting the handbrake. So to mount the handbrake, I made this adapter for my PVC handbrake mount. It just connects through 4 bolts onto the PVC, and then there's these 4 bolts here which connect the handbrake. You can make the same sort of adapter for 80/20 or just pre-drill straight into an existing handbrake mount. So to mount the handbrake, it's just the 4 bolts, so I'll connect them up now. So now you just go ahead with a standard Allen key and tighten all 4 bolts. I will just skip ahead while I do this because it takes a little moment. So once you have the handbrake mounted, it's time to connect the controller box. I have my controller box mounted in the PVC pipe down on these 2 bolts here. They're just connected through some rubber insulating washers to the controller box inside. Now you'll have this cable here which will go to the pressure transducer. So to connect that, you just plug that in and push it until you hear a click, and then that's the wiring all done for the handbrake. So now that the handbrake is all installed, we'll be able to test the mechanics to make sure it works. So as we pull on the handbrake, you'll see the slave cylinder will compress the rubber buffers. This will give you the nice hydraulic feeling. So again, you can adjust the preload by adjusting these 2 bolts, which will adjust how quickly the resistance builds up. This has a really smooth action compared to the old Type 1 handbrake. I'll now go on to configuring it in the software. Once we have the handbrake installed, we'll need to calibrate the handbrake. To do this, use the Windows control panel. If you go to control panel, then devices and printers, you'll see this DSD 12-bit controller. That's the handbrake. If you right click on the controller and go to game controller settings, you'll see the 12-bit controller in there. If you click on properties, you'll be taken to the calibration screen. On here, if you pull the handbrake, you'll see that the Z-axis will move with the handbrake. Now to calibrate how much force is required to get to 100% on the handbrake, just go into settings here, then reset to default and click calibrate. Now you'll want to click next until you get to the Z-axis. Now once you're on the Z-axis, click on display raw data. That will show you how much input you're putting into the handbrake. Now if you wanted only a light amount of force, then pull on the handbrake a little bit and then let go. Once you're happy with that, click on next, 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 and finished. Now back in the calibration screen, you'll see that it will only take a small amount of force to get to 100% handbrake. Now if you wanted a stronger amount of force, then go back into settings, go to reset device, go to calibrate, click on next, 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 until you get to Z-axis, and now we want to put a lot more force into it. So the last time we got up to about 91%, which was about here, so we're going to pull it a lot harder now. So we got up to about 180% on there. So now click next, 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 finished. And now you'll see that it will take a lot more force to get 100% on the handbrake. So just adjust this to how much force you want, how hard you want to be able to pull the handbrake, and then once you're happy with that, just click OK. After this, you'll be able to use the handbrake in-game. Okay, so now it's time to have a look at some gameplay footage and share my thoughts of what the handbrake's like to use. In this clip, I'll be racing Dirt Rally in my DIY motion simulator with rear traction loss and the Oculus Rift CV1. The Oculus Rift support for Dirt Rally only came out a few days ago, which was perfect timing for my handbrake review. I think Dirt Rally in the motion simulator shows off how much fun it is to use this handbrake in rally. I really like the feeling of this new handbrake versus the Type 1 handbrake. The movement is really smooth, and with the longer handle you have a lot more control. The build-up in resistance from the rubber buffers is nice and linear, so you can have a predictable handbrake pull every time. It really makes doing these slides a lot easier. I love how bulletproof this handbrake feels. It feels very well engineered and very solid. The handle has a really solid feel to it and is well molded to your hand. The DSD shifter and handbrake make a perfect combination. It feels like it's right at home in a WRC rally car or rallycross car. Also with the long handbrake handle, it means that I can mount the handbrake right next to my shifter. The long handle means that my elbow won't hit the reservoir. This is really great, as the old handbrake, the handle was a lot shorter, so my hand would hit the reservoir. This is really great for VR because then it means I can find the shifter and handbrake really easy while using the Rift. Muscle memory is a big part of using the Rift, so it helps having the handbrake in the easy to reach location. I really like that you can adjust the handbrake on the fly by adjusting the preload, and the handbrake handle position selector comes in really handy. I used to do rally racing in real life. I competed for 6 years on the windy roads of New Zealand, so handbrake turns were very much a part of rally racing. I mostly competed in rallies and hill climbs. The hill climbs in New Zealand are very windy, usually taking place on mountainous roads in either the Alps or on the Coromandel Ranges or the likes. There was a lot of sharp hairpin turns, so using the handbrake was a must. This handbrake very much reminds me of how it used to be back in my rally days. The resistance in the hydraulic system mimic a real rally car very well, and it feels very natural for me doing handbrake turns. So in summary, I really like this handbrake. I love the look of it, I love the feel of it, it's really precise, it makes doing handbrake turns a lot easier. You've got the precision, knowing that you can pull the handbrake at the exact strength you need to do the handbrake turn. I think it's a massive step up from the old Type 1 and Type 2 handbrakes, and it would look really great on any rig. Thank you for watching my review.
Square right, opens, ditch outside, 200. 200 through dip. And crest, turn hairpin right, don't cut. Into left 5 long, don't cut.